Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah and let's talk Fear Street. So if you were born in the 90s and are a horror lover like I am, then you probably grew up with the Goosebumps and Fear Street series. Now for myself, I don't know for sure if those are what got me into reading in general, but it's definitely what got me into the horror genre, I think. Now these series are written by R.L. Stine. He is definitely iconic in the horror sphere. He's actually 78. I actually wasn't sure if he was still alive or not when I googled. So the original Goosebumps series has 62 books, and I remember I used to have a duffel bag full of them and I have no idea what happened to it. I remember constantly going to the library to pick up new ones, but Goosebumps was definitely for like elementary school age. It's probably the youngest demographic for horror there is, really, and those usually follow like preteens, whereas the Fear Street series, which has 51 books, usually deals with older teens or like very young adults, and so is for like a slightly older age group, which as I aged as a child, I definitely graduated from Goosebumps to Fear Street. And I honestly cannot tell you how many of them I read. I would seek out whatever I could get my hands on. I mainly read books from the library, so most of them were from that, especially Fear Street. But last year when I had to go back to the US in November, I was going through my books and I found these 3 Fear Street books. And these are the only ones I think I've ever owned of that series. I figured, why not reread them? Like, I have them, why did I hang on to them? And I have fond memories of Fear Street, but I definitely can't imagine it's anything that's gonna like blow me away today. So I think it would be interesting to see what my thoughts and feelings are on these currently. So I have a Fear Street Saga one here that's called The Secret, and it's actually the second in a series. I don't even know if I read the first one when I originally read this. Like, I know 100% that I've read this one, but with how I devoured books, I can't imagine I didn't read these two. I recognize this cover, but I just don't exactly remember it. So I am not going to read the first one before reading this. I don't think it's something I really need to do. However, there is a family tree in the beginning of this, and it's just kind of like, oh boy, gonna have to keep track of that, I guess. The Fear, which... Fear, which I don't know if that's how it's actually pronounced, but it's also the word fire with just 2 letters flipped. But this one says, what is the secret of Fear Street? Why has its horror lasted for so long? Ezra Fear wants to find out. He searches for the answer among the rotting bones in the ghostly town of Wickham, but he finds only betrayal and death. Elizabeth and Kate are in love with the same boy. How can they know that they too are caught by the evil that will haunt this family forever? So another thing that differs Fear Street from Goosebumps is there's a lot more like death and blood and maybe some gore. Like, they are darker stories than like the fun, campy Goosebumps tend to be. So I think I'm gonna start with this one. And I'm hoping, because since like, I mean, they're so tiny, they're really short, and like, look how big the text is. I'm hoping there's a ones where like just before I go to bed I can like knock one out kind of thing. But I think I'm gonna start with that one. Then actually I think I'll read these in order, because according to this one, this is the one that comes right after it. So then I'll read Final Grade and then Switched, which I'll read if outside cannot be noisy for 2 seconds. So when I read these, I'll read the descriptions on the back of them, but like these 2 are from 1995. I almost forgot to say that. And this one's from 1993. And like you can see on the covers like how old these are. Like you can see like the little cracks and everything. And like this one especially is completely water damaged. Like something definitely spilled on it at one point. And yeah, they're not in good shape. But I mean, I've held on to them for all these years for a reason. And so I'd like to see if that can be more than nostalgia purposes. So let's jump right into this one. So I realized I didn't say before, but this is the order that I think I'm going to enjoy these in. Just kind of based off of the covers and the descriptions. So we'll see if this is accurate. And, oh wait, I did that wrong. It's this. This is how I think the order is going to be. My mistake. Okay, so I have finished this first one. I thought I wouldn't be back until tomorrow with my thoughts on it and everything, but I just got kind of bored and figured I would start it and ended up reading it in one sitting. It only took like an hour and a half, so these are very, very quick. And I'm actually gonna give it 3 stars. Like, it was better than I was expecting. It's written better than I was expecting too. There are a lot of like familiar phrases from the YA genre in general in here. I had a good time. Like, it kept me engaged. It kept me wondering what was gonna happen next. Everything that happens in here is super obvious to guess though. And like, my comment about the last name is actually even like part of a thing in here. So I thought that was kind of funny. But like, the plot moves at freight train speed. There are a ton of plot twists and everyone is really overdramatic, which I think are all things that are used to keep like the younger crowd interested. So none of those things are necessarily bad, but I think something like this is definitely a good entry into the horror genre for a kid. Like, there are some pretty dark moments in here and some brutal moments. It's not really like just this bloody, gory mess. It's just more straightforward and isn't really chock full of scares, but it definitely introduces you to like the more unusual twists and like motivations that tend to pop up in this genre. And also definitely don't need to read the first one to read the second one. Like, I was able to follow along perfectly fine. And apparently there's even a third one. But yeah, I don't own that, so I'm not going to read that. So next I'm going to read Final Grade, and the description on the back is: intense, competitive Lily Bancroft had good reasons to hate him. She lives to win, and he was about to destroy her dreams. But murder? That was going too far, even for someone as driven as Lily. She's innocent, but that hasn't stopped the whispers behind her back, or the weird phone calls late at night. Then someone else is brutally murdered, and suddenly Lily is drawn into a nightmare she can't begin to control. Will her final grade be her last? So this one sounds really dumb to me, and like, this definitely takes the cake for one of the worst covers I've seen. So this is definitely the one I really don't have high hopes for. I just hope I don't end up rating it a 1. So we have another surprise. I am giving this 4 stars, which I definitely never would have thought. I also thought this was the worst one out of the 3, or that this was going to be the worst one out of the 3, and right now it's in the top spot, and I only have 1 more to read. So I think child me would have actually been a bit like traumatized by this book, because there is a lot of real life horror in here. There isn't like anything supernatural or like a creature or anything going on. And also, especially for like a woman, the whole like stalker, you can't be with anyone else, you have to be with me, it's going to be you and I forever kind of thing that's happening in this book. Like, that's a real legitimate fear. It's just very real world in this one, and I think that's what actually made it scary. So I wouldn't say the main character is exactly likable in here, or that any of them are really. Dialogue, I think, is always going to be a pretty big miss in these books, but most of the time we're spent in the character's head, like the main character's head, and so you see their thoughts a lot. And I think that is more pertinent to the story and what's going on and everything. So even though this one has like literally, I think, the worst cover I've ever seen, it's definitely one of the better ones. And also, like, the cover and the description of this one, I think are very, very misleading. Like, that's really not what this story is. And so I think that's actually another reason why I ended up liking it better, because with the cover and the description I was like, I don't really care about this story, but it definitely morphs into something completely different. So the one that I have left is called Switched, and this is the one that's like really water damaged. Like, you can see how squiggly all the pages are there. And so the description of this one is: there's a little cabin in the Fear Street woods where a girl can really lose her mind. In fact, she can change it into someone else's. That's what happened to Nicole and Lucy. Now Lucy is in Nicole's body, and Nicole is in Lucy's. What a trip. But for Nicole, what a trap, because Lucy is using Nicole's body to get away with murder. And I feel like this whole like trading places thing is definitely something we've seen before, so I'm interested to see what little twists R.L. Stine adds into this one. I was also kind of looking at reviews a few days ago, and I saw some people say that this is actually one of R.L. Stine's favorite Fear Street books. And so we'll see if that kind of lives up to the hype a bit, I guess. But tonight we are actually going to a light festival on the Isle of Impressionists, which Impressionism is one of my favorite art styles, so that just sounds really interesting to me. But it's something like for the evening. It starts at like 7 at night and goes until 11. But there's supposed to be like a night market, some food trucks and stuff. There's going to be like a boat parade. There's some circus thing happening, and there's a museum there that's going to be open late tonight. So I don't really know what we're going to end up doing until we get there, because I mainly just kind of want to wander and just kind of see what there is. But today has been the coolest day of the summer. Like you can see I'm wearing kind of sweater kind of thing. It's only 64 degrees out right now, and so tonight it is definitely going to be one of the coldest nights of the season so far. And so we are definitely getting more into fall weather, which is so weird because Monday's supposed to be like 85 degrees, but then it's supposed to drop right back down. But as long as it doesn't rain, I will be happy. We are supposed to be leaving in less than half an hour, and it is raining and is not stopping.
Savoir se mettre en quête pour faire plaisir aux touristes. Il a fière allure mon restaurant, avec ce nouveau balcon et son fronton. J'ai tout démoli et reconstruit en 1867. Ça m'a presque coûté aussi cher.
Pas de fortune. Et quoique, fort sympathique et de bonne compagnie pour le plaisir de la conversation.
So, last night was not exactly what we expected. The advertisement for it made it seem like it was going to be a lot bigger than what it was. There were only a few vendors for this night market. There was only 2 food trucks, one selling hot dogs, one selling poke bowls, so that was just not it. And then the museum itself was incredibly tiny and had the weirdest animations, which you would have seen in that clip there. But I mean, we did get out of the house and it was a nice area, so I guess that was good. But then today we had the Korean Street Food Festival, and we just got back from that a few minutes ago actually, and we ended up having the same food that we had when we had gone to the Korean Food Festival back in July. But that one had a lot more food vendors and everything, but the lines were so freaking long. Like, oh my god, there were so many people in line. It was insane. And some of the lines just were not moving at all. So we just got delicious chicken. But yesterday I was able to finish this one. I just didn't have enough time to go over it before we left. And unfortunately, this one was a bust. I'm only giving it 2 stars. The main character in here is incredibly unlikable. Like, oh my god. And they lean so hard into the trope of like, will you just sit down and listen to me, but not actually say what's important, like right off the bat. I absolutely hated it. It got so repetitive with that. The twist in the end, I just don't really like that they went that direction at all. I honestly think if it had been what the description was on the back, it would have been better than what this was. And also on the back, it says it's in a cabin. It's not a cabin, it's a wall that they jump off of, so I don't know how the description is straight up wrong. But this one had some very boring moments. It's the first one out of the 3 that I was actively bored with, and I just found it infuriating. So in the end, my ranking of the 3 of them is the exact opposite of what I thought it was going to be. So this is what I thought it was going to be because I accidentally showed it wrong the first time. I thought it was going to be that. And this is what it actually is. So there's my final ratings. The secret in the middle. Final grade is actually the best, and then switched at the bottom. But one thing I really like about this series is just how self-contained the story is, and how there's no beating around the bush. Like, we get right into the story, like especially in this one, like chapter 1, they're switching bodies kind of thing. And I really love that, because sometimes, I am breaking stuff. Because sometimes in books, like, it just takes so long to get to the point. There'll just be so much like fluff or just stuff that doesn't matter. But these, they're so short. It has to get to the point extremely fast, and sometimes that's just all I want. So do I think these are worth rereading as an adult if you enjoyed them as a kid? Yes, I actually do. But as you can see here, I think we probably have every end of the spectrum here, where we have something that's actually really good and surprising, something that's average, and then something that's just not it at all, like this should not be what it is kind of thing. So I find that kind of funny. So, I mean, if you go into this and are like, I'm gonna read the entire series or whatever, it's definitely gonna be a roller coaster of ups and downs, 100%. I do wanna see if my library has any of these. I am not expecting them to. I really am not, since these books are like from the 90s and early 2000s. But I don't know, maybe they'll surprise me. But it is that time of year where if you just want, not exactly a scare, because this was the one that was the closest to being like actually scary. But if you just want like a quick thrill, I would definitely suggest maybe picking some of these up. Like, if you can remember what some of your favorites were from when you were a kid, I think that these are fun. Like, it only took like an hour and a half to read one kind of thing, so you can definitely do it in one sitting, like no problem. And if you didn't read these as a kid, I think they hold up. Like, I don't know, I grew up in the 90s, so I mean, like, not having a cell phone or anything like that in the books, like, doesn't even really register to me. So if you're younger, I don't know if that might be distracting to you or not, but I do think they hold up. I think the way they're written is pretty similar to how YA is written today. Like, I recognized a lot of phrases that are used in today's YA books a lot. So that was a fun little childhood reread for me there. So thank you for hanging out with me while I went through this little mini adventure. It is always appreciated. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.